In the late 1800s, a woman was visited by the spirit of her deceased daughter to tell her how she had passed away. And this is the only recorded case where a ghost testimony was used in court to put away the bad guy.
I see you.
Hi guys, it's me, Haley, and welcome back, or welcome to A Little Shadow and Stories, where I do two of my favorite things: talk about something that's spooky and gives me nightmares, and two, do a little bit of makeup while we talk about it. Now, this week we are traveling northeast a little bit from last week's episode in Tennessee. If you haven't seen it yet, please go back and check it out, or do it later. I don't know. It'd be really cool if you did. But we're going to West Virginia this week, where we're going to talk about ghosts helping solve crimes. Now, if you like today's makeup or even the story, please give me a subscribe and even give me a comment to tell me something that you like to do. And I guess I don't know, let's drop a fun fact about me, because you don't know me and I don't know you. So I guess one time I proposed to a man, and you guys don't see a ring, so we see how well that worked out. It's okay. Anyway, let's get back to the story, and I really hope you like it. Zona Heaster was born to Jacob and Mary Heaster in 1873 in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. And she grew up in the Richland area, which is a very rural part of the county. Now, in 1896, at just 23 years old, Zona met a local man, well, not so local, man named Erasmus Trout Shue. Quite the name on that man. And he was a drifter, so he had just moved into town because he had gotten a job working for the local blacksmith, Jacob Crookshank. The blacksmith shop was located in, off of Midland, the Midland Trail there, and he had kind of made a name for himself doing his blacksmithing work. And apparently Zona and him somehow crossed paths, and she fell in love with him, despite her mother having serious... She didn't want him around her daughter. But to everyone's surprise, shortly after them meeting in 1896, Zona and Erasmus, his name is really hard for me to say, got married. And they eloped while Zona was wearing a really lovely burgundy high neck gown. And of course, after they got married, she moved in with him. Now, Mary never liked Erasmus and continued to make that known to her daughter Zona, but Zona, she kept living her life. She stayed with him, and their life went on. Now, and they were not together for a super long time, but on January 23rd in 1897, Erasmus was at work one day, and he decided to visit a home near the blacksmithing shop, and he asked a little boy named Andy Jones to pop by their home to ask Zona if he needed to pick anything up from the grocery store on the way home that day. Well, poor little Andy did what he was asked, and he went to Zona and Erasmus' house and walked inside. And unfortunately for poor little Andy, he found Zona on the floor at the bottom of the stairs where she had died. Of course, he was I think he was 8 or 9 years old, so he quickly ran home to go tell his mother what he had seen. word got around, Erasmus was notified that something had happened to his wife. And so the local doctor, George W. Knapp, was sent to the house to check. Now, it took George a full hour to get to their home, and within that hour, Erasmus was able to get home, pick up his wife's body off the floor from the bottom of the stairs, take her upstairs, and to change her clothes, which was kind of unheard of at the time. Usually when a woman had passed away, the people, like the women specifically, and the community would go to the home and take care of those things. So it was odd that Erasmus had done this, like gone home and cleaned up his wife's body and brought her upstairs to wait for the doctor. Now, upon getting to the house, the doctor needed to, he went to Zona's body, tried to resuscitate her. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. It had already been too long. And so then he had to kind of do like a cause of death overview of her. So the doctor was checking over Zona, and I mean, he couldn't really tell that much because Erasmus had dressed Zona in her wedding dress, which, if you remember correctly, was a high neck gown, so it went all the way up, and then he had put a veil over her face to cover her, so he wasn't really able to just see very much. And while the doctor was trying to look things over and see if he could tell what had happened, I guess Erasmus had just gone off the wall, and he was cradling her head in his lap, crying. And when the doctor tried to reach up to touch her her head area, he was got really violent with the doctor, so the doctor stopped looking at her. So after looking at her and seeing what he could, he determined the cause of death was the everlasting faint, which I guess was a common term they used back in 1897 to, I don't know, it was just a generalized term for women. And which I guess they said that the most common link to this sort of death were heart-related problems or hysteria, which no. And then a couple of days or weeks after he had come up with this cause of death, he actually changed the cause of death to pregnancy complications, because 2 weeks prior to her dying, she had visited him because she was having female troubles, and there was never any proof that Zona was actually pregnant. There was no baby born, so take that as you will. After examining Zona's body, and we'll give George the doctor a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because he did say that he did notice some bruising on Zona's neck, but because Erasmus was so off his rocker at the time, he didn't really get to look into it further. And then this is where he loses the benefit of the doubt, because he just went for the generalized cause of death for it. But afterwards, George sent word to Zona's family to let them know what had happened. Now, this was in fact a small town, and as small towns do, word spread quickly through it. And 2 men working in the area heard what had happened, and they decided that they would prefer to let Mary and Jacob know what had happened to their daughter. So the 2 men arrived at the Heaster home, which was located 15 minutes away from the city area of town, and notified her parents of what had happened. And Mary's immediate response to hearing this was, "The devil has killed her. That devil has killed her." Referring to her husband. Not Mary's husband, Zona's husband. The next day, January 24th, Zona's body was taken from her home that she shared with Erasmus, and it was taken by carriage over to her parents' home. Now, people in the community said that Erasmus had shown great devotion to his wife at that time, and he was refusing to leave her side. The family decided to hold a wake in their home so that the community could come, like, say their last goodbyes to her, and he never left her side. But also, anytime anybody got too close to her or tried, like, touching the body, he would, like, freak out on them. They also said that they had noticed, like, the community had noticed that George had placed a pillow on one side of Zona's head inside the casket and then rolled up some fabric and placed it on the other side of her head, and he said it was so that she could rest easier. But the community said they had noticed, like, while he was doing this kind of stuff, her neck appeared to be, like, not normal. It was kind of, for lack of better words, floppy. Now, the Monday following Zona's body being brought to her parents' house was the funeral. And after the funeral, Zona's mother, Mary, took a sheet that Erasmus had put inside the coffin with Zona and tried to return it to him. But I guess he refused it and didn't want to take it back. So she took it home, and I guess when she picked it up, she noticed that it was kind of stinky. So she decided that she was gonna wash it before she put it away. Mary goes to wash this sheet so that it can be clean and put away properly. And she was using water, like a tub, to wash it. And she said that when she put the sheet into the tub, the water just started turning blood red, which she thought was really weird. And so she took it back out, she tried to boil it. The redness from the water had dyed the sheet, like, it stained it pink. So she was trying to get the stains out of it, and she couldn't. She tried to, like, hang it back outside, and the stains never came out. And Mary took this as an omen that her daughter did not die of natural causes, that she had actually been murdered, like she had said earlier. Following this discovery, every night for several weeks, Mary was praying that her daughter would, like, send her some kind of message to let her know what had happened to her. And a few weeks into her praying, she said that her daughter finally showed up. For 4 days, Zona would wake her mother in the middle of the night. First, she appeared as, like, a ball of light, and then Mary kind of got the memo when a figure started to appear, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that's my kid." And for those nights, Zona was repeatedly, like, telling her what had happened to her. Zona told her mom that one day Erasmus had come home and it was dinner time, and apparently he wasn't pleased with the dinner she had made him because she, like, didn't cook him meat for dinner. Sorry, boo-hoo, dude. And I don't know, instead of being the loving husband that Zona thought she had, he violently attacked her. Zona had told her mother that Erasmus, like, popped the first joint of her neck to kill her, and then to reiterate this fact to her mother, apparently her head then spun around. After getting the full story, Mary was like, "Oh yeah, I knew it." I almost forgot concealer. So she made her way down to the town prosecutor, John Alfred Preston. And she was like, look, dude, we should look into my daughter's death because I'm pretty sure Erasmus killed her. And she like told him about how Zona had visited her and told her and spilled the beans. It's good for you. Of course, John was like, I don't know about a ghost, but you know, also at the same time as Mary coming in to tell him about all of this, there were rumors spreading throughout town, and I guess the local newspapers had printed stories about how Zona's death was like, didn't seem to have happened the way that it was told to them. And so, trying to shut down the rumor mill and ease Zona's mother, Mary, he reopened the investigation and he sent deputies out to kind of start getting the down low on what actually was happening and what the townspeople had to say. Alfred took it upon himself to go speak with George the doctor himself to see like what his thoughts on where the cause, like his thoughts on the cause of death were and stuff. And Alfred told him that due to Erasmus' outbreak during his examination, he had to cut it short, and that's why that was what he had claimed was the cause of death. After talking to the doctor, John was kind of like, I think we need to actually exhume Zona and we'll do a proper autopsy to see what happened. And the doctor agreed. On February 22nd, 1897, Zona's body was exhumed from the Seoul Methodist Church's graveyard, and it was brought to the local Nichols schoolhouse, which was like a school for children, but they were obviously dismissed early for the day so that the autopsy could be performed. And of course, throughout the like process of trying to get her exhumed and stuff, Erasmus fought the whole thing. Like, he wasn't gonna be there, they weren't gonna do this, and the prosecutor basically told him, like, dude, you'll either show up or someone will force you to be here. And so he was there on the day they exhumed her body, and I don't know what this guy's problem was, but like, he was apparently heard saying, like, they'll never be able to prove I did it. Just turn yourself in now, you nasty. So the autopsy took 3 hours to complete and was done by kerosene lamp. So yeah. There's gotta be some whimsy somewhere, I guess. But there were 5 men present at the time of the autopsy, and that was an officer, Erasmus, the prosecutor, obviously the doctor, and then some witnesses. They did like their initial cut, checked out her organs, didn't find anything out of the ordinary, and so the doctor turned her over to make like a cut at the back of her neck/skull area. And before he could even make the cut, I guess he decided he did not need to, because he looked up at Erasmus and said, your wife's neck's been broken. Now, it should also be noted that because it had been so cold outside, it was said that Zona's body had been perfectly preserved by the weather. So there wasn't any like thing that was keeping them from knowing exactly what had happened there. And so the doctor looked at him and was like, your wife's neck's broken, and Erasmus kind of like dropped his head down and said, again, I'll never be able to prove that I did it. Well, clearly they thought differently because he was arrested and brought to the local brick and stone jail to await trial. After being arrested, the doctor's report was made public to the community, and he had written that Her neck had been visibly broken, her windpipe in the front had been crushed, and there were still visible fingerprints, like bruises on her neck from where she had been choked to death. They also said that the neck was broken between the first and second vertebrae, like apparently Zona had told her mother Mary when she visited her while she was sleeping all those nights ago. Of course, being the man that he was, Erasmus was taken in, arraigned for murder, and then he wasn't going to admit to what he had done, so he pled not guilty to it because he thought that they only had circumstantial evidence because they were basing it, or because this was all brought up because Mary had seen Zona's ghost. While waiting trial, more information about Erasmus had made its way into the community. Apparently, he kind of had a little bit of a record on him, not only a criminal one, but a marital one too, because he had been married twice before. The first time, he was married to a woman named Allie, and they were divorced in 1889 after he was arrested for stealing a horse, and she used that time while he was away in jail to get the divorce because he had been extremely abusive towards her. She wanted to get her and her child out of the home. Now, shortly after their divorce, he was remarried to a woman named Lucy Ann in 1894, and poor Lucy, she died of mysterious circumstances after, well, they weren't so mysterious, after Erasmus had told the community that while working on the roof, a brick had fallen off the roof and hit her in the head and she died. Even then, after Allie's death, apparently people thought that that was kind of unusual, but unfortunately for Allie and the townspeople, he slipped out of town in 1894 before any kind of repercussions could happen to him. Of course, after poor Lucy's death in 1894 and him managing to slip out of town without being caught, he moved to Greenbrier, where he met Zona in 1896. And clearly he had motives, or maybe he was like a man Black Widow. You know how they call women who kill their husbands Black Widows? Maybe he was the same thing. So, and I'm only saying that because while being in jail, it said that Erasmus maintained a happy demeanor, got over Zona's death, and was even telling people in the jail that his dream was to have 7 wives. Ew. And he also kept telling reporters that there was no proof that he had actually killed her. So he just kept his merry way. He thought he was going to get away with it. But on June 22nd of 1897, the trial began. And Mary, Zona's mother, was brought up to the stands to speak about how she was the first one to say nah, dude's shady, we should look into this further. Preston, who was the prosecutor at the time, did want to avoid the topic of the reason that Mary wanted them to look into this was because Zona's ghost had visited her. But unfortunately for him, the lawyer for Erasmus decided to bring it up anyway, and Preston was worried that the jury would think that she was sounding crazy and that there was no reason for it and they wouldn't be able to prosecute him. Well, speaking to Mary, the lawyer for Erasmus, he was trying to make the jury think that she was having crazy motherly ravings and she was just upset because her daughter had died, but Mary stuck to her guns and didn't falter, and that frustrated him, so he just dismissed her and didn't want to talk to her anymore. So the maturity really runs deep on that side of the trial. Now, of course, like, being that a ghost was brought up into the trial, the judge there, he was kind of worried that this would affect how the jury felt, but the jury left to go communicate to decide on Erasmus's fate. Now, the whole ghost thing apparently did not sway the jury at all, because an hour after them going to talk it out, they came back and they determined that he was guilty, and 10 of the members of the jury wanted him to be hung for what he had done to Zona, but unfortunately it wasn't a clear, like, everybody agreed, so he was given a sentence of life in prison. On June 11th, 1897, a lynch mob actually formed because they were not pleased with the outcome of the trial, and they felt as though Erasmus had deserved to be hung instead, so they were going to go take care of business themselves. Now, I guess luckily for Erasmus, a man named George Hara decided he was going to go notify the sheriff, and so the sheriff hid a very visibly scared Erasmus in the woods behind the jail until the other deputies could get the situation under control and send everybody home. Now, after that, they kind of decided, like, bro can't be here anymore, so they transferred Erasmus to the Virginia State Penitentiary. He served for 3 years until March 13th of 1900, when a flu epidemic actually spread throughout the prison, and he caught it, and he died there. And his family wanted nothing to do with claiming his body, so he was buried in the, like, the Tom's Run Cemetery is what they call it, nearby, and he was just tossed into a grave, no grave marker or anything. There weren't even any kind of, like, records of the cemetery until the 1930s, so no one really knows where Erasmus's body was buried there. And you know what? Are we mad about that? We're not, because Rose freaking sicko. After Mary had seen Zona those nights when she was praying to have her tell her what had happened, after that, Zona was never seen again as a ghost. So she kind of just, she made her peace and left the earth. But a sign was put up off of Route 60 to commemorate Zona and what had happened to her. I'm just going to read what the sign says to you because I can't memorize this, but it says, "Interred in the nearby cemetery is Zona Heaster Shue. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband," who they call Edward because that's, like, the nickname he went with, so people didn't have to say Erasmus. But honestly, it kind of suits him. Now, anyway, on her husband, Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account. Edward was found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison, only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer. He eventually did get what was coming to him, and Zona got her peace, luckily, and unfortunately that was at the cost of her life. But if that she did in fact help her mother get the justice she deserves, then good. Now, this is today's makeup look. It's pink, my favorite color. I love it, and I hope you guys do too. And I hope to see you guys next week. Bye!